Hello, Product School, and welcome to this week's Product School webinar. Today we have some special guests. We have not one, but two product managers from VMware joining us. So let's say hello to Pia and Helen. Hello, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, thanks for having us today.
Hi, glad to be here.
Thank you for being with us. So before we get started and jump right into Pia and Helen's presentation, I just wanted to let you all know a little bit more about what Product School is all about. So you can see my screen here. Are you guys able to see my screen, by the way?
Not yet on my end, Helen. It says, there we go. Now it popped.
Awesome, okay. Just wanted to make sure before I started rambling. Okay, so if you're interested in connecting with other product managers, aspiring PMs, or anyone in tech, you can join our Slack community. We have over 50,000 product professionals in this community, and it's a really great place to network. We host weekly events like AMAs with product managers across all the board, like Pia and Helen. So that's really a great place to network. And we just recently launched a blog, a job portal where you can find the latest PM opportunities. So we'd like to make sure that you always have the resources that you need with Product School. For those of you who are new here, Product School has over 10,000 alumni and 20 campuses across the US, Canada, the UK, and in our online cohorts. We host events across the world related to product management, but also coding, data analytics, digital marketing, and UX design with leaders from major tech companies. So the product manager certificate path is a little bit like this. We have 3 different courses. They are the product manager certificate, the product leader certificate, and the product executive certificate. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about the differences between these different certificates, you can head to productschool.com and also schedule a call with us anytime, and we'll be glad to explain it to you. We just wanted to let you know that this webinar is being made possible by HEAP, a smarter way to approach product analytics. Learn everything about your users, run rapid experiments, and iterate quickly. For hypothesis-driven product managers, there's no better tool than HEAP. HEAP offers product teams a clear pathway from data to decisions. So if you'd like to learn more about HEAP, our sponsors for today, you can head to heap.io. So in addition to our cohorts, our online courses that we have and our in-person courses, we also offer corporate training. So it's individual courses that you can customize to your corporate office, and you can upskill your product teams, and we will design the course specifically for you. So we have trained employees from multiple companies such as Deloitte, Salesforce, JP Morgan, and Bank of America, amongst other companies across all industries. So feel free to speak with me or any of us, or head to productschool.com if you have any questions about any of the information shared today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Helen and Pia and give you a little bit of background on them. So Helen George has successfully delivered digital products for clients in various industries, as in retail, travel, healthcare, and more. She's also turned complex business problems and customer needs into creative, innovative solutions, and is an expert in agile software development with an extensive experience in leading cross-functional distributed teams. And we also have Pia Chakrabarti, who is a product manager at VMware as well. And she is a data-driven product manager aiming to delight users by building intuitive, impactful products, and believes that the best products are made by strong teamwork. Her expertise includes analyzing qualitative and quantitative user feedback, A/B testing and experimentation, and user research and user-centered design. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and hand it over to Pia and Helen. And as always, feel free to leave any questions that you have about their presentations here in the comments. And towards the end, we'll get to as many of them as we can. So let's go ahead and welcome Helen and Pia again. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see. Then make that into presentation mode. Can everyone see it okay?
Yes, looks good.
Yep, you're
Awesome,
great.
thanks. So good morning, everyone. Thanks again. Today, my colleague and I are going to give a talk titled, Don't Build a Monster. As product managers, we are oftentimes focused on creating business and user values, and we constantly measure the outcomes generated by our products and how our products are driving change in our target users' behaviors. But when was the last time we considered how our products might be unintentionally impacting the people and the society around us in an unexpected way? So in today's talk, we'll be talking about those unexpected, unintended consequences of our products. I know we already did some intro. Nikki, thank you for amazing intro. My name is again Helen George. I'm a product manager at VMware, which was formerly known as Pivotal Labs. At Pivotal Labs, I help clients learn how to build better software by leveraging agile and lean methodologies. Previously, I also worked at ThoughtWorks and delivered software across various industries, including airline, retail, finance, and healthcare.
I'm Pia Chakrabarti. I'm also a product manager at VMware. So as Helen mentioned, we were formerly part of Pivotal. Pivotal Cloud Foundry is a product that I worked on, which is now rebranded under VMware. And before working at Pivotal VMware, I used to be in the consumer space as a product manager. And before that, I was a consultant at IBM as well as at other tech firms across several different kinds of industries. All right, so as any good PM should do at the beginning of any meeting is set some goals about what we tend to accomplish today. So here today, as Helen said, we are trying to figure out how we can build better products and consider the consequences. So our three goals here are first, figure out what companies are doing and how they're unintentionally building monsters sometimes. We're going to share some real life examples and go over what ethical design thinking is. And then we're going to provide some frameworks to you about how you can evaluate your products and the consequences of them going forward.
Most companies don't start out by wanting to make a negative impact around them. They don't intentionally build a product that is a monster that is going to damage society. Instead, most companies and their founders strive to create monetary value while improving our way of life or experience in some measure. To give you an example of some of the companies with good intentions, let's take a look at some of the well-known companies and their core value statements. Here at VMware, we believe technology as a force of good. We understand how technology impacts the world, so we always strive to make net positive impact with the tools we create. Square, they're not just a company that provides convenient payment solutions, but they promote fairness and value empowering various people, all the people, to strive in economy. Twitter, they value free expression and believe in the fact that every voice has the power to impact the world. But
there are some times that companies, even though they have the best intentions, they fall into traps. And now I'm going to go over some of these traps that are easy to fall into. So first, let's talk about the gig economy. Gig economy is great in one way because workers have control over their schedule as well as their earning potential. However, the trap that comes along with the gig economy is that the company's profit model is more than likely based on the cost that they're saving by not paying their workers for benefits, overtimes, and so on, which can end up being bad for society in many ways. Additionally, gig economies also disrupt and displace industries that have been in place for many years and can cause some conflict there. Now let's talk about subscription services. So we all use subscription services, I'm pretty sure. And the great thing about it is that we can subscribe and pay monthly without having to make a big upfront commitment, and we can stop whenever we want to. However, it's not so easy to stop whenever you want to. Complications during cancellations may occur. The product might not be very user-friendly when you don't want to use it anymore. And also users sometimes feel like they're not getting the month-over-month additional value, because a lot of these subscription products are based on a certain time period of your life, such as job search, which may not be relevant always. Then let's talk about social media. So there's a bunch of social media products out there, and it's very popular. And then that's because users are able to connect to each other using social media, and they're able to foster new communities, which is a very great and impressive thing. However, with social media comes a lot of data, because people are sharing lots of personal data. It's hard to tell from a user perspective what of that data is real and fake. And from the company's perspective, it's tricky to actually make sure that that data is safe and address all the privacy concerns that may arise. Another issue is that social media is usually free with ads, and sometimes the user's experience is compromised in favor of making ad revenue. So now we've gone over how companies unintentionally could build monsters or fall into traps given some of the regular methodologies and services that are available today. And now we are going to share some real life examples of that.
Strava is a social fitness app where it tracks your running or cycling activities. I personally know a few friends who use this app in preparation for the LA Marathon that just happened this past weekend. It's a great way to find and share new running routines. It helps you connect with other athletes as well, and it's great in building communities. Most importantly, it promotes a healthy lifestyle by using the app. Back in 2017, the company decided to share a data visualization map that shows all activity tracked by its users. And something unexpected happened. Here you're looking at one of the maps shared by Strava. You're looking at a map of Afghanistan, and these bright white spots are actually military bases. What Strava didn't realize by publishing these data was that it was unintentionally sharing sensitive information about the location of military bases and spy outposts. Taking a closer look at one of these areas, you can see how detailed the layout of the base is explained, and you can even see the airfield on the right. It's clearly visible. With more than 3 trillion individual GPS data being shared on Strava, it was unintentionally putting national security and military personnel at risk. Now I'm going to share my own experience about unintended consequences and how I handle it. So one of the projects that I worked on was for a company where it deals with real estate data, and they were selling various property reports. So the business owner had this idea. Why don't we group different reports together and sell them in bundles? From business perspective, it made sense because it's going to allow users to buy more, make more transactions. It also made sense for users too. Instead of adding one by one and buying those one at a time, you can group them, buy them in bulk, even reduces time. And also we were incentivizing by reducing the cost for if you bought things in bundle. So how great is that? Win-win. Let's do it. So the product team went back and we did some further research and how we might bundle different data and reports. And we realized actually 2 particular reports contained almost the same exact data. These were legal reports and also transaction history reports. So we didn't realize that the legal report only had additional line that was different. So if we rolled with it without further investigation, we could have possibly either damaged the company branding, or we would have made users unhappy by charging extra money. So we went back to the business owner and suggested that we should either not promote this or make it very clear. So if users do choose these two particular reports as a bundle, we need to make sure they are aware they're buying almost the same exact report, not realizing they're buying, paying more. So that's one of the examples that I had where we didn't realize what we were doing was unintentionally, possibly damaging the people around us.
Those were some great stories. Thanks for sharing. I'm going to share one of mine. So the project that I was working on at the time was for a subscription service business. And we felt like the product was doing well. We had launched it, getting great feedback from users on what they felt like they were being able to get done. However, there was one main complaint that did come whenever there were complaints about the product, and that had to do with the pricing model. So this product was a freemium product, so it was free for a certain amount of time, and then it became paid month to month. And we thought that was very clear, since at the beginning, when you sign up for the free portion, you actually have to put in your credit card number. And on that page, we say on there that, hey, this is going to be free for X number of days, and then we're going to charge you this month to month until you cancel. But for some reason, users were still confused about that, and we wanted to make sure that we were doing right by our users. So what we did was we did an experiment where we simply, on that credit card page, we had the same verbiage there, but what we did was increase the text size so it was no longer fine print and it was just regular text. And by doing so, we saw that yes, the number of subscriptions did go down. However, the users that did subscribe seemed a lot more satisfied. The negative reviews went down, chargebacks went down, and chargebacks are always bad for a business. Just the overall satisfaction of users was good, because now the users that were subscribing knew what they were getting into. So this is an example of how sometimes businesses do make the trade-off in favor of their users. It's not always about the numbers. It's about a balance between providing your users what they're expecting and still being able to maintain and sustain your business. All right, so now we have examined how companies sometimes unintentionally build monsters, and we've also shared some real life examples. And now we are going to talk about some frameworks. So how can I avoid building a monster is what you want to know, correct? So there are several ways you can avoid doing it. And one of the ways is by keeping in mind the concept of ethical design. So there's many things on the internet, books, and so on about ethical design. There are many different types, and I'm just going to touch briefly upon a few of them. So there's accessibility. Is your product usable, and is it inclusive to different sorts of groups? Is your product fair? Is it equal? Do your users trust you? How about social impact? What kind of impact does your product have? Is it sustainable? Is it socially conscious? These are all domains that you may want to think about as you are building your product and different features. So now I'm going to hand it over to Helen. I went out with kind of an overview of different domains to think about. Now Helen's going to go over this framework that your team can do together to drill down further on your unintended consequences.
Thanks, Pia. So this is a speculative consequences exercise. I first heard about this from an internal conference that I attended last year. It is fairly a simple exercise. All you need is whiteboards and stickies and Sharpies and your team. I would encourage you to do this with your entire product team, including engineers, designers, and even your business owners. You first start out by, from the middle here in the users and non-users, you identify your users and non-users, and then make your way out by brainstorming both the intended and unintended consequences of your products. I would encourage you to use different color stickies so that it would be easy to group them and sort them later. Also, one idea per sticky, which helps you to glance over easily. And also, you can Flex your divergent thinking. I would say there's no such things as unrealistic idea, because you want to brainstorm as much as possible, dump all your ideas, all your crazy ideas here, and we're gonna vet through them later. You could also think about consequences that might affect across various timelines, like 1 year out, 5 year out, and 10 years out. As I was doing this exercise, I realized it was a bit tricky to understand. I understand who are my users, but who are the non-users? It could be pretty much basically everyone in the world. So here I have an example of Uber. And the way that helps you to frame non-users are to think about the sectors and the areas, the industries that your product is in. So when you're thinking about users, it's very easy. You have the drivers and you have the riders, but the non-users, then you start thinking about, okay, Uber is in transportation industry. So who are all involved in transportation? There'll be bus drivers, taxi drivers, and so on. Also, you'll think about, it's about policies. Who are the policymakers for all these things? Then you start thinking about police officers or different policymakers. Also, there was an issue about security for riders that came up. So then that's also about related to policymakers. So that way, like when you're thinking about the industry that your product is in, it really helps. It helps you to think about non-users and to scope it so that it's still relevant. It's not too wild. After you do that, there are various ways you can prioritize these consequences stickies that you came up with as your team. You could prioritize them against your own core values, or you can prioritize them according to potential risks. One way to prioritize them is by time frame, which is shown here. You'll see several buckets of time frames. You and your team can transfer the brainstorm tickets onto this new whiteboard or area space and sort them and group them by various time frames. Once you have sorted them, take a look at the board and do some silent reading, internalize it. And then you want to discuss about the things that you identified as a team. And some of the things that you can discuss with your team members are there any patterns here? Was there anything surprising? What consequences do you have direct control of, or do you not have control of? And before taking any further action, I would encourage you to make sure you validate some of the consequences. And as a team, you should decide where to start, which item to start with, and when you would like to do something about it. Also think about who should be involved and how you might want to mitigate this, and how you might want to measure how the mitigation is going on.
So that was one of the frameworks that you can use with your teams. We talked about ethical design, and so I'm going to go a little bit deeper into ethical design for these additional resources. So here on the right, you'll see is the ethical OS checklist. So it divides many different risk zones, 8 risk zones here. And what you could do is, as you're building your product or building your product features, you can see, hey, am I falling into one of these risk zones? And if so, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to acknowledge the risk and move on, or am I actually going to come up with a mitigation plan? You can also refer to a designer's code of ethics by Mike Monteiro. He's done a lot of work around ethical design, and he shares his philosophy around it. And I think it's very useful. So if you're interested in figuring out how to avoid these unintended consequences, I highly recommend that you check out these resources as well.
As product managers, balancing business needs and user needs is already an art, like this man walking on a tightrope that's laid between the Twin Towers in New York. And on top of that, balancing intended and unintended consequences could be even trickier. How do you know what actions to take? How do you know what to mitigate and what to work on? So the point of today's talk is we would want to encourage you to consider both intended and unintended consequences. And we wanted to make sure we bring awareness of the impact of the products that we are building. As a recommendation, I would suggest define a set of core values as a team as you're building the product, so that you can constantly measure and also evaluate the products that you're building. And ask yourself a tough question: who might we negatively impact with our product? I know we don't want to think about that, but I would highly encourage you to you know follow the resources that we shared and also the framework that we showed you. Try doing that once a quarter. I try to do it on my team here, and really expose a lot of the unintended consequences that our products could have possibly generated. So that is the end of our talk. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you. Nikki, do we have any questions?
Yeah, okay, thank you guys so much for that informative, oops, there you go. Sorry about that. Thanks so much for that really thorough presentation. So we do have a couple of questions for you. So we love to ask this question to different product managers that we get here on the webinars. As an experienced PM, what would you offer to do? What would you tell an inexperienced PM to do in their first 30 days?
In their first 30 days on the job?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I would say in your first 30 days, the most important part is getting to know your team, getting to know your customer, and getting to know your business. So just exposing yourself, taking as many calls and meetings as you can to understand how your team jives and how your customers are experiencing what they're experiencing, what their biggest pain points are, as well as what is the business really trying to do.
That was actually exactly the same point that I was going to make, Pia. So at the end of the day, we build product for people with other people. So really understanding the people that you're working with, delivering the product, your team, your business, and also the people that you're building your product for, users and other customers. I think that's like the most valuable thing.
And in your experience, how did you start the process of reaching out to customers and building relationships with them and getting to know those users that you're talking about?
Helen, I'll let you go first this time.
Yeah. Sometimes it's in the form of cold calling, which is not the best. It's not the best ideal case, but we would have some customer data, customer information available to us. Then we would email them and ask for a user interview. And we would usually like politely ask them like, hey, like there's some incentive too. We would like to make your experience better. Could you dedicate about like 15-20 minutes to tell us more about the product? So that's one form of engaging with customers.
Another form can be going through other teams. So for example, when I was on the consumer side, customer service was a great segue to get to a customer. So talking to some customer service reps and asking, hey, do you have any contacts? Are there any customers who you've heard from, or all the customers today that you speak to, would you be able to ask if it's okay for us to reach out? Sometimes we will offer incentives like Amazon gift cards and so on. So I've done that in the consumer space. As far as the B2B space, I've talked to the sales team and seen, hey, do you have any relationships? And how can we leverage these relationships to set up some meetings? And in both cases, I've found that people are very willing and open to share their experiences and appreciate that the product actually wants to reach out to customers and they feel like they're being heard.
Great, thank you for those answers. Okay, I have a couple more questions from the people watching online now. The first one is, would ethical design essentially fall under usability or business viability?
That's a very interesting question. I had seen it more as falling under usability, but we've seen that in this climate, ethical design can really affect your business viability, because if you're not designing your product in an ethical, sustainable way, eventually users will get turned off. You will get bad press, and that's going to be bad for your business overall. We've seen that in the past. So I think that now it's clear to us that it's a focus on both usability as well as business viability.
Okay, another question. By Sheriff says, when you are working in a disruptive product, it is supposed to affect the industries in many ways and that are very hard to assess with emerging technology. How do you handle that?
I think the framework that the exercise, the speculative consequences exercise is definitely one way to do. Given that we can't predict the future with all the tools that we create, we can't possibly, you know, think about all the consequences that could generate. With that caveat, I would still say that doing that exercise as a team does help you think outside the box. When, as product managers, when we're so focused on our target users, how to engage with the target group, we tend to marginalize certain people outside that realm. So thinking about users, like the non-users, I would say is going to be key.
Great. Okay. And I have one more question, and then we will get everything wrapped up. What are the most impactful communication failures of product managers, in your opinions?
So we've talked about your team, we've talked about the business, and we've talked about the customers. I think the most complicated relationship there often is with the business in terms of with stakeholders, because when it comes to a product, everyone has their opinion. Stakeholders have different opinions sometimes and are not on the same page as you. So I've always made it a very big effort to make, when I start on a product, see who are the main stakeholders and how can we continuously be on the same page with them? How can we keep them in the loop? Because that's the place that I feel like often has the biggest gap.
Yeah, to add on to that, I would say within the team, one thing that really helped me to promote better communication as a team was creating this thing called user manual. So pretty much talks about what's your communication style, how do you like to receive feedback, what's your learning style on things, and how do you like to work better. So whenever a new member joins, actually recently we had quite a lot of churn within our team. So we had asked any new engineer that gets onboarded to the team to fill out this user manual. That way we were able to identify, okay, this person likes to be communicated this way versus the other. This person receives feedback better in this way, and so and so. So that's from a team perspective. And for stakeholder communication, one thing I always try to do is first meet them in person, try to make the connection. And then also you can directly ask them about how do you like to get communicated? Are you just interested in being informed? Do you want to be consulted, or do you want to be actively involved in decision making? And do you prefer email, Slack, or other communication tools, and other various preferences? That way, you don't have to second guess or learn the hard way, and it worked really well for me.
And a few resources to add on the stakeholder end is you can try using a stakeholder map or use RACI. Both of those set up your different stakeholders and how involved they're going to be in day-to-day decisions and overall plans for your product.
All right, well, thank you so much, Helen and Pia. That is all the time we have for questions today. There are a couple more that are on in the LinkedIn, so if you would like to continue the conversation, definitely feel free. But again, thank you so much for presenting, and thank you so much to everyone who joined us today here online. So before we leave, just remember that we do offer weekly on-site and online events in more than 100 cities. You can also find more information about Product School on our social media accounts, and we're at Product School across all of the channels. So you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And you can keep up with the latest product management content at our blog, which is at productschool.com/blog. So thank you again for joining us, Helen and Pia, for taking time out of your day to explain this amazing concept to us and for all the thorough answers. And thank you to you online who are asking questions and engaging. This is great. And I hope everyone has a really great day. Everyone stay safe, healthy, and we will see you back here next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.